Blood and Relationships, and he's an official doctor, the new host of the hit logo show, That Sex Show. Please welcome for the very first time to TKIF, I'm just going Doc Mike. Dr. Mike.
Hey, thanks for having me, Kemp.
Dr. Mike, first of all, Dr. Mike Dow, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
But we'll refer to you throughout the show as Dr. Mike. First of all, congratulations on the new show and logo.
Thank you so much. I'm very, very excited about this. It's sort of a groundbreaking show, doing three live shows every single night, East Coast, West Coast, and an uncensored online version. So it's been quite the week. So I'm happy to be here on TKIF. Thank Kemp, it's Friday.
Thanks for the plug. But, I have to say, I watched the show all week. It is groundbreaking because we don't have anything on television that's talking about so many different topics that you guys talk about. It's funny, it's informative, and it's truly entertaining.
That it is. I mean, I heard things and questions this week that I've actually never heard before. And you know what I love about that, Kemp, is that I really believe that knowledge is power. Mm-hmm. And especially when it comes to sex, I think a lot of people, young, old, gay, straight, bisexual, whoever you are, if you like vanilla sex, if you like fetishes, anything in between, when people don't get their questions answered, they tend to be ashamed, and they do things in private, and they also do things that are not safe. So, we talked a lot about safety and safer sex, but we also talked about good relationship and love choices as well. So it really runs the gamut on the show, and I've never worked on a project that I've had so much fun doing.
And you are definitely the voice of reason with this panel. There's a psychic, an ex-porn star, and the lesbian host.
Yes, correct.
And Dr. Mike, you are the voice of reason. I mean, I think everyone goes back to you. Okay, Doc, give us the sensible answer right now. We're all done being funny, but I think everyone adds something special. But I also think all of you are experts in your own right.
That's absolutely right. I mean, a lot of people, my mother in particular, were very concerned that I was going to be doing a show with a porn star. I think all the guys out there listening will know who Katie Morgan is. She was just inducted into the Porn Hall of Fame, and those worries that I had were eased the first time I met her. She is now retired and married, and just a very, very lovely, sweet girl. But I think you're right, Kemp. Everybody does add something very unique to this very strange grouping of people. And, I can tell you clinically what a position has been shown to do in studies, but then, lovely Katie Morgan then jumps in and says, oh, well, when I was being double penetrated on this one movie, this is what that actually felt like. And that's something that I certainly can't tell you. And then, our wonderful host, the lesbian girl next door, Heidi Hamilton, she hosts the Heidi and Frank show here in LA. It's a big drive time radio station here. And then, of course, the psychic, which is very interesting because sometimes people will call in and say, should I break up with this guy? Is he cheating on me? And I don't know if the guy's cheating on you, but sometimes Dougal, our resident psychic, does. So it's really just an interesting, fascinating, and sort of crazy show.
I love it. I'm truly a fan. But, we have to let people know we're here again with Dr. Mike Dow, the new co-host of the new hit show. I'm calling it hit because I love it. That Sex Show on Logo. First of all, I have to ask you, what has been the weirdest question you've received so far being a part of this show?
The weirdest question, gosh, there's been so many. Last night we had a question about is it okay to eat fruit out of somebody's butt?
Yes, I remember that question.
The butt bowl.
Yeah.
Clinically the answer is, as long as the butt is clean and you're not putting yourself at risk for parasitic infections like Giardia or E. coli or Shigella, then, if you don't want to use a traditional bowl and you want to use somebody's butt, I guess be my guest.
Doc, we talk a lot about fetishes in society. It's become really common. But, in America, I think we're more closeted about our fetishes and sex. Do you find that?
I do. It's very interesting in some other cultures. Sex is just a lot more out in the open. If you go to Europe, there's a lot more sex, just, breasts on television. And some of these things would never fly in America. And I think there's sort of this very strange paradox where Americans are, it's sort of like the binge drinking thing. I don't see a lot of Europeans binge drinking and dying on college campuses like Americans do, and I think we have a similar relationship to sex, where we don't talk about it, we're ashamed of it, but then here we are out there, people are doing weird, crazy things in an unsafe way. So, I think the more we talk about these strange fetishes, I think it's a really good thing. I think it's a safe thing. There was another question, I think, this week about a sadomasochism question, a BDSM question, and it was about fingernails and liking blood being drawn. And
Ooh.
that's actually a very high risk factor. And I talked about the fact that if you are going to keep your fingernails nice and trimmed nice and neat, that can actually decrease the risk of STD transmission. So just weird things like that. I think it's really good to just talk openly and honestly about them.
And you always have an answer, doctor.
Well, listen, I've seen and heard it all. I really have, doing a lot of sex therapy in my practice. I just find sex and relationship therapy interesting because, I used to host a show on TLC about weird food behavior and eating disorders and stuff. And I think a lot of people could relate to that. But let me tell you, love and sex and relationships, every single person on the planet has a question when it comes to that area. So I think this area is very universal, because who doesn't struggle in their love life or sex life? So that's why we have to come to you live 5 nights a week, I guess.
And I think it's perfect, and we got to remind people that you can watch that sex show on Logo TV. But I have to think the other great part of that sex show is it's so interactive. You can call in, you can Skype in, you can tweet, all of that great stuff. So I think that's really, really cool.
It's awesome, and Kemp, I'm sure people call into your show all the time. People love seeing themselves on TV. So, we are getting a lot of video chats from all over the country, and it's really fun. We are even starting to get some couples video chatting together. We had one, a husband and wife who just had a baby, and they needed to spice up their sex life, and by the end of the video chat, after our advice, they were making out on the video chat.
Wow.
So you never know what you're going to see.
Do you ever have a moment or a question that has made the doctor uncomfortable?
Yes. I am the only person on the panel who does not talk about my own personal life, just because I do have a practice, and doing what I do, it is very important for me to sort of maintain the blank slate so that people don't start projecting their own neuroses onto me. It's just sort of my job.
Yeah.
So the other night we ended the uncensored show by Heidi asking me if I was circumcised or not, and I just turned to her and I said, I bet Dr. Drew never had to deal with this crap.
And there are going to be a lot of comparisons, Dr. Mike, to you and Dr. Drew. Because I definitely see you going into that realm, and people are going to have questions about who you are as a doctor, because that's just who we are. People want to know more about you. But what you want to tell us a little bit more about Dr. Mike.
Yeah, well, I'm a big fan of Dr. Drew, and I was a huge fan of Loveline, and one article said that hopefully that sex show is filling a void. Loveline, even though it still continues as a radio show, I think in LA, it's been off television for 10 years, and there has been no regular call-in love and sex relationship advice show since Loveline. So, and I owe a lot to Dr. Drew. I got started. I have a practice in Los Angeles. I've always been very, very passionate about love and relationships, and relationships are just so complicated. And so when I started to specialize in sex therapy, it was just sort of an aha moment. It was just sort of a, wow, this is something that, let me tell you, every session camp is juicy. So I'm never bored at my job. So maybe that's one reason why I specialized in this. But I'm just really passionate about it. I'm writing my next book. My first book was called Diet Rehab.
Yes.
It was about weight loss and food addictions. And I liked writing that book. I really did. But let me tell you, my next book, which I'm writing right now, it is just flying out of me. It's going to be all about love and sex and relationships. And you just get in that moment of flow where you just know, oh, this is what I'm really meant to be doing, and I think that's what I found. So I'm very, very lucky.
That's definitely powerful, Doctor. You have to come back on the show so we can talk about your diet rehab book, because we need to talk about that other side of things. But we're talking about sex and relationships, and we have a question in the chat room, and Vera wants to know: does he have any tips for Valentine's Day?
Tips for Valentine's Day? Yeah, there was a new survey that came out yesterday that they surveyed over 1,000 people, and you may want to save your money, and instead of buying a piece of jewelry, you may want to travel, because the survey found that couples who travel together were A, more likely to make it past the 5-year mark in the relationship, and B, and I think this is more important, the couples who travel together reported lasting improvements in their sex life. So, one trip to, anywhere from Maui, or even if you do a little staycation at a little, hotel around the corner from you, and you draw a little bath with some rose petals or get some champagne and put the new Alicia Keys CD on, that can really spice up your love life. The other thing that people, it's always interesting what people respond to. They're tweeting me all day about something that I said this week, and that is that the scent that has been shown to stimulate the most blood flow to the genitalia in men is a combination of pumpkin pie and lavender. So
wait. What was that first one?
What pumpkin pie?
Pumpkin pie?
Pumpkin pie mixed with lavender. They measured penile blood flow, and that was the scent that actually caused the most increase in blood to the genitals. So if you can, people are like, well, what should I bake a pumpkin pie? And if you can find the pumpkin and a lavender candle and you light them together, that may make for a very rousing Valentine's Day night. So there are some tips for you.
Wow, Dr. Mike, you really have a lot of knowledge in that brain. Wow, if you guys just tuned in, I'm here with Dr. Mike Dow, new co-host of the great logo television show, That Sex Show. And we talked a little bit about Loveline. I have to say the difference between Loveline and this particular show is that the characters that make up the panel, it's funny. It's funny. It's informative, and that's the difference I'm getting, because I'm old school, so I remember Loveline, and it was great and it was informative. But I think the difference is that it's really entertaining to watch.
Yeah, we want people to laugh. We want people to have a good time, because listen, if we are going to educate and inform people, the only way they're going to tune in, time and time again, is if they're having a good time. So we do laugh a lot, but we always take every question seriously. It's a very non-judgmental place. We never laugh at anybody, but there's certainly a lot of jokes that if you want to watch, talking about that, going back to that butt bowl question, we gave the guy a serious answer, but then especially my co-hosts, they like to crack a lot of jokes, and sometimes I have to bury my head in the table because I'm laughing so hard on the show. So we have a good time while we're doing it.
A big question that we get from our gay followers and things like that is the question about poppers. Poppers has become a really popular, I guess you would call it a drug, amongst men that have sex with men.
Yep.
Can you tell us the dangers of poppers, if any?
Yeah, so poppers, while they don't create a severe danger of addiction, the addictive profile is less than a drug like heroin or OxyContin or cocaine. So it's not like people are losing their jobs or their families or their relationships over poppers. But in terms of the short-term brain-damaging effects, inhalants, including poppers, probably kill the most brain cells in one sort of dose. So, I mean, in this case, people are inhaling it. So in one whiff of poppers, you are actually killing a whole lot of brain cells, a lot more than other, more addictive drugs. So there's that, of course. A lot of people use poppers to relax, especially for anal sex, so that they can actually achieve that relaxed state. There are a lot of other ways to do that, both for vaginal and anal sex. And we are seeing an increase of hospitalizations when people are mixing Viagra recreationally with poppers, and there have been a lot of deaths and a lot of hospitalizations. That can be a very fatal combination, and people are going to these, people take Viagra or Cialis recreationally. they start having a lot of sex, and then poppers become involved, and that can kill you. So there are some dangers there.
And I think it's an important conversation to have because I read a lot of different magazines and hear a lot of different interviews, especially in the gay community, and they don't talk about that.
Yeah.
So I felt it was like, a doctor's here. Let me ask the doctor.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's, and the dangerous thing, Kemp, is I think that it's a very common combination. I think that a lot of people who are going to a gay weekend party, poppers and Viagra are everywhere. So it is really important to talk about. I don't recommend either because the other thing, especially with Viagra and Cialis, we're finding is that while there's no cause and effect, I'm not saying that Viagra causes STDs, but we do see a correlation between people who take Viagra and Cialis recreationally and a higher STD rate. So we just have to look at this information and say, oh, okay, well, what do we do with this? I believe that a 25-year-old guy, gay or straight, except in rare cases, you should not need Viagra to get it up, And if you do, then let's talk. Let's do some sex therapy and let's figure out what that is for you, as opposed to resorting to something that is maybe going to hurt you in the long run.
Are there other solutions for people that actually do have an issue with erectile dysfunction and they're not able to get it up? Are there other solutions besides Viagra and Cialis and things like that?
Yeah, erectile dysfunction is very common. It is. We are all, as men, going to be affected by it probably after the age of 50 at some point in our lives. And the funny thing, yeah, but the funny thing is it's okay. And here's the thing about really great lovemaking and really passionate sex: if you can learn to enjoy the journey and not be so caught up on the destination, you can actually have better lasting erections. You can have better, stronger orgasms. Masturbation is not just something that you do to feel good for the three or hopefully 10 or 15 seconds that you're having that orgasm. Masturbation can also be sort of a training ground. So a lot of the patients I work with, I teach them ways to make their erections harder and their orgasms better by doing Kegels and by squeezing the muscle that you would squeeze if you were going to stop urinating, and also by practicing different sex techniques. A lot of guys, a lot of guys have trouble having an orgasm or keeping it up when they're wearing a condom, which of course I always recommend wearing a condom in addition to limiting your sex partners and knowing your partner's STD status and all that, and birth control. But a lot of guys can actually practice masturbating with a condom on so that you can actually create a classical conditioning so that when the condom goes on, you don't lose the erection. I also recommend masturbating in different positions because a lot of guys have to do it in one certain way, and then when they're making love to a woman or man, they have to be lying on their back or they have to be in missionary position, and that gets a little boring for partners. So if you can actually train yourself, it's sort of like going to a taekwondo class or a dance class or a kickboxing class. There are certain things you can do to not only strengthen the muscle, but also learn some skills and techniques. So I think masturbation sort of is a double whammy in that respect.
Definitely. And if you guys just tuned in, Dr. Mike Dow is a part of this really great show called That Sex Show. And if you're loving the conversation that we're having now, you can only imagine what the show is like. It's just so informative, so funny. I love the show. Can you just let everybody know where they can get more information on the show and on you, of course?
Yeah, of course. So That Sex Show airs live every weekday at 11 p.m. on Logo. We do, and you are truly getting it live. We do a show for the East Coast Live and the West Coast Live, but wherever you are, that airs at 11 p.m. We also do, if you want it a little juicier or if you don't get Logo, we also do a uncensored version every weeknight at 11:30 p.m., and that one is Eastern time. So if you're in another time zone, you have to adjust. So 11:30 Eastern, 10:30, what is that, Mountain, no, Central, 9:30 Mountain, 8:30 Pacific. And then if you want more information on That Sex Show, you can go to logotv.com/thatsexshow or check in at our Facebook page, facebook.com/thatsexshow. If you want to tweet us and get your question answered, it's at That Sex Show Live. And my Facebook page is facebook.com/Dr Mike Dow, DrMikeDow, or you can go to my website, drmikedow.com.
And we're going to be posting links to everything about the show and you and everything like that. But before we let you go, Doctor, first of all, you have to come back because you've been such a great guest, and we want to talk about all the different things that you're an expert in. But you're definitely the expert in sex and relationships. So we have to ask you our question of the night. Every Friday here on TKIF, we have a question of the night. And tonight's question is about, would you be okay with your friend dating your ex? I'm sure you've had that question before, right, Doc?
Yeah, that's a pretty common one. People tend to run in circles, and it's sort of inevitable that people date other people's ex. And I think that's a gray area question. It just depends on the intensity of the relationship, how long the relationship was, and also how long it has been. And I also believe that what's that frame, bros before hoes, and I think whether you're a man or a woman, that applies, and you have to talk to your friend, because let me tell you, relationships come and go, but I really believe that great friendships can last a very long time, and hopefully the rest of your life. So I think that you really need to talk to your friend and make sure they're okay if that's the case.
Most definitely. Dr. Mike Dow here on TKIF Think Hemp. It's Friday. We appreciate you being here on the show. We hope you'll definitely come back because we want to talk about diet rehab. We want to talk about so many other things, but we do appreciate you dropping by the show. You're part of the family now.
Thanks, Kemp. Would love to.
All right. Hey, stay on the line. We're going to play some music, and when we come back, we have some hot topics to talk about. Thanks to Dr. Mike Dow. Make sure you guys tune into Logo TV for That Sex Show every weeknight at 11 p.m.